Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to give you the 10 poetry collection recommendations. Now this video was requested by Nathaniel over on Instagram, so I hope you like this video. I hope you find some good poetry recommendations here, and I'm always open to video requests. Just ping me a DM on Instagram or leave a comment down below and I'll try and get to it. I will not ever be able to get to it in a timely manner, but I will do my very best. But without further ado, I'm here to recommend you 10 poetry collections that I absolutely love. Now, I'd be remiss to start this poetry collection video without mentioning my two favourite poetry collections of all time that I consider to be the best of the best, which you may have heard of because they are quite well known. So the very first one I'm going to recommend to you is Ariel by Sylvia Plath. This is one of her most famous, if not her most famous work, and I love this poetry collection. I reread it every time I'm sad to feel more sad because it's quite emotional, and each one of these poems kind of delves into mental health, into death and grief, into what is worth living for, I would say, but also kind of some of the beautiful elements of life. And the way that Sylvia Plath writes is just magical to me. I think she knows how to choose words that evoke emotion, whether it's tulips, where it's all about tulips, but ultimately it's also about mental health, or Lazarus, about death and resurrection, but also in some ways about suicide. They all just really evoke a sense of feeling in me that no other poem does. And I've reread this collection in entirety multiple times, so much so that my copy has scribbles all over the pages, because each time I read it I feel like a different self or part of me comes to it, and I discover and find something new in each of her poems. My second most favourite poetry collection of all time is The Black Unicorn by Audre Lorde. Now this poetry collection is just a master of writing in my opinion. The way that Audre Lorde uses repetition and form and style to bring across the meanings of her poems absolutely fascinates me. In this one you also get a lot of love poems, and I don't usually like love poetry, but this is queer love poetry, and that was revolutionary in itself when this was published. But it's also just love poetry that actually makes me feel a semblance of love, even though I'm not the persona that the poem is talking about. But it also delves into a lot of other things and themes as well, which you'll discover when you read this poetry collection. Another poetry collection which is fast becoming one of my all-time favourites is All the Names Given by Raymond Antrobus. Now Raymond Antrobus is a black Jamaican deaf poet, and I only say this because it really is part and parcel of this poetry collection. In this one, the theme of deafness and that disability is kind of woven into the poems. Some of them have to do with the subject matter of what it's like or what it means to be deaf in this world which is made for hearing people, but also in the ways in which, in brackets, some of the sounds and onomatopoeic elements to the imagery is kind of woven into the collection as a whole. And I thought that was really smart, and he describes sounds that you don't actually hear, they're sounds that you see, and that kind of is just probably a sense that someone who is deaf only experiences, and I never really considered or thought about, and it opened my mind to that possibility a lot more as well. But also, as a black Jamaican British person, a lot of these have to do with culture and identity, and those are woven into the poems as well. I think what I really like about this poetry collection in particular is not the individual poems, but how this collection feels as a whole, thematically, as one moving piece that continues to roll on, and I recommend it as such. A poetry collection I discovered last year but really loved is Don't Call Us Dead by Danez Smith. And Danez Smith is a queer black poet, and in this collection they talk about what it means to be a queer black boy in this world, and how death is kind of woven in to all of these poems, because what it means to be queer and black in some form or element is living your life realizing I'm not dead yet, and these are the things that could make me dead, and these are the ways in which I want to live. And those three sentiments are woven into each and every single one of these poems, whether it's a hopeful poem where they just want to live and feel alive and feel free in their identity and who they are, or whether it's in I'm not dead yet, I'm still holding on, I'm gritting on and surviving. Those are the themes that encapsulate this poem collection as a whole. But also there are short poems, there are longer poems, there are poems that span several parts in this collection, and I loved how some poems kind of felt all grouped together, all seemed to be one everlasting flowing voice, but then some of them are kind of shorter and distilled and really dug into the subject matter that they were presenting. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I was equally moved by these Wild Houses by Omar Sakr. Omar Sakr is an Australian Muslim gay poet. I'm realizing a lot of these are to do with like cultural identities and identities, whether that's queerness or culture and religion, but that's just me in a nutshell and what I find interesting to read about. These Wild Houses is a bit hard to get a copy of if you are not in Australia, unfortunately, but I really like this poetry collection because I think that Omar Sakr is one of the best poets I've seen at using imagery to kind of create a sense of the poem. The images that he evokes really weave into the narrative and really weave into the thoughts and feelings that he has around identity and family and religion. A lot of these have to do with what it means to find a home, because he is someone who is of multiple cultural identities. He kind of delves into what home is, the different homes that he's lived in and where he feels like he belongs, but also home as a sense of identity and family, the family members that accept who he is and those who don't, those he has and hasn't told and how they might react if they have. All of that is kind of ground into each and every single one of these poems. For coloured girls who have considered suicide when the rainbow is enough by Ntozake Shange is a choreo poem. So it's a poem that kind of bridges the line between poetry, dance and theatre. So you might get stage directions in this, you might get a sense of what music should be playing, and you also get poetic verse. And in this one it's talking about black girls in different situations, black women who have felt crushed by different reasons, like the reasons why they are alive. They are crushed, they are feeling hopeless, whether that's to do with money and trying to overcome poverty in America, or whether that's to do with the way that men treat them, or whether that's to do with trying to get a job. It's all about the ways in which society has crushed the black women who underlie a lot of the labour and a lot of the emotional labour as well. And I just read this and thought it was an absolute masterpiece. It's a masterpiece in rhythm, it's a masterpiece in movement, and I'd never come across a choreo poem until I'd read this, and since then I've discovered more, but none of them reach the great heights that this choreo poem has reached. It would be remiss of me not to mention Shakespeare's sonnets. So I don't read that much classic poetry. I'm very much more a contemporary or modern classics poetry kind of person, and I especially mostly read black, people of colour, queer voices in poetry. But Shakespeare's sonnets are one of the exceptions. I really love them, and I love most of Shakespeare's plays, so this also makes sense. But what I think is that his sonnets follow a very strict rhythm and line, as a sonnet must, and yet they manage to really say lovely things, especially a lot of the romantic ones. There's some kind of dark lady ones and love ones, but I think the love ones in particular just are so beautiful and so well worded, and I've remembered some of the lines and I carry them with me. And sometimes, you know, when you're in nature in a beautiful day, I just think of Shakespeare's sonnets and I'm like, this is exactly what he was trying to encapsulate. This is exactly what he was trying to say. And so I think they're well worth reading because you might find some gems in there. He's written quite a few, so you can muddle around and see what you like. The Wild Fox of Yemen by Threa Almontaser is a poetry collection about what it means to be a Muslim girl after 9/11, what it means to be a Muslim girl in general. And I read these and I thought, this is just beautiful. This is beauty in words. And I appreciated that. I appreciated how reading each and every one of these, I was like, oh, I'm taking something away from their experience. I'm learning something here. I'm feeling an experience and a moment in time. It was quite specific. And a lot of it also had to do with displacement and longing for a sense of home that you cannot return to because it's currently not safe to be there, because it's currently being destructed by other people that don't really understand or know anything about the culture. And admittedly, I didn't know that much about Yemen before going into this one. I knew the large, vague schemes that you know of what's going on in the country, but not about an individual personal experience. And so this actually prompted me to do more research, to hear more voices from people who are actually from Yemen, and it really struck me as like, this has made me wake up and realize something. On that note, I equally wanted to recommend Bless the Daughter Raised by a Voice in Her Head by Warsan Shire. I discovered Warsan Shire because she writes the poetry that is kind of woven into Beyonce's visual album Lemonade. But this was her debut poetry collection, and let me tell you what a debut it was. In this one, it largely talks about what it means to be a black girl, what it means to be a black religious girl, what it means to be displaced from home, and how you find home and belonging in these present times when you can feel connected to so many different places. It talks about blackness, and it specifically talks about a mother-daughter relationship, as the title kind of suggests, and what to do when that mother-daughter relationship is in turmoil and has many moving parts to it, and you're not sure how to feel about it all. All of that is kind of working through those emotions and feelings. It feels like this poetry is working through those emotions and feelings. And I'm someone who's really largely interested in mother-daughter relationships and that communication and that connection and how women relate to each other. And so I really liked how this poetry collection kind of broke that down and discussed it and picked it apart and explored it. And last but not least, I'm going to recommend my favourite poetry collection of 2023, or one of them at least, and that is A Little Resurrection by Nwulu. And this one is a poetry collection that largely, for the most part, I think looks at Black British culture and identity and race, but also what it means to kind of resurrect yourself, what it means when you lose a part of yourself or something within you dies, but you come back again reinvigorated. And that theme of resurrection, in terms of like blackness, in terms of identity, in terms of finding your purpose and finding who you are, is woven into the poetry collection at large and as a whole. And so even though this poetry collection touches on some really dark and deeply emotional themes, ultimately, it also feels really, really hopeful because it is about resurrection, because it is about coming back time and time again to fight another round. And so I quite liked that this poetry collection felt hopeful and wholesome, even though it could touch on so many themes as well. And there you have it. This was a bit of a difficult video for me because I find it's really hard to review and talk about poetry when it's such a deeply emotional and personal reading experience, but I hope you found some recommendations there. Please let me know in the comment section down below what are your favourite poetry collections. I also think if I made a list of my favourite poems, it would be very different because not all collections have my favourite poems, so if that is something you might be interested in, do let me know. But otherwise, please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!